I too came to this country from Germany. My grandfathers were pastors and professors in the confessing church, a church that had some very bold leaders. You might know some of the names: Dietrich Bonhoeffer and Martin Niemöller. My grandfather, Hermann Schlingensiepen, was arrested with both of those men in Berlin. And he was told that because of his illicit activities, he was, after the German Endsieg, the final victory, to find his way to Dachau for liquidation. My grandfather emerged from the war a very sad man. He watched the church stand by and say very little. Only very few men like Dietrich Bonhoeffer and Paul Schneider and others spoke out against what Hitler was planning to do and did to the European Jews. That they did, that the Nazis, the atrocities they committed against people with disabilities. Friedrich von Bodelschwingh led one of the great neurological institutes, one of the great care facilities. And with life and limb, he defended every one of his residents against those who would transport them off to the camps. Both of my grandfathers felt guilty for the rest of their lives. They felt guilty because they could have stood up sooner, and they could have spoken. They were men of the word. But instead, they were more concerned with the preservation of the church and its independence from the Nazi bishop that Hitler would have installed over the Protestant churches in Germany. That pain is my legacy, and I don't say that lightly. I'm going to continue anyway. My father is a medical doctor who came to the United States and ended up training at the Menninger Foundation. He died in 1973, and my mother was a director of psychology at Kansas State Hospital. One of the places that we have closed with promises that were not kept. Prisons and bridges and rescue missions are not adequate places. And there are many in the mental health field today who are seeing their budgets cut, who are working in the trenches to do the best they can with the little they have. We came to Kansas. We came to Topeka, a city of which I've always been proud. Proud because of the medical and mental health infrastructure that we had. But this is really what I would like to say. The people at KNI and the 3,000 to 4,000 or more on the waiting list who are eligible for services, but who are not receiving any services because there's not enough money. These people too deserve our care. I was appalled at the notion that one could save money on the luxurious care provided to the residents of KNI and that if that were then somehow taken, it could provide some help for all those that are not receiving services. And now we pit those who are receiving services against those who are not receiving services. What we are doing there, whether we know it or not, is appealing to the meanest aspects of human nature. We are saying that there is scarcity, and because there's scarcity, everyone needs to fight with everybody else for a piece of the pie. We hear that it's a difficult economy and that we all need to tighten our belts and all the rest of it. Well, it just ain't so. There's plenty of money in this state.
That's right. There is.
We need a discussion about fair taxation, from the wealthiest all the way down to everyone who has any means, and churches and religious organizations, if that could be possible, ought to be willing to give up their tax exemptions in order to do their part and to live up to the words of the Old Testament prophets and of Jesus of Nazareth, all of whom claimed that the vulnerable do have a voice. It's the voice of God. It is the voice of God speaking to the rest of us. In churches, we know that budgets are documents of faith. By constantly chopping and cutting the budget and promising more and more services, we are lying to ourselves, and we are not developing the courage we need to do what needs to be done to create a society in which all God's children should want and be proud to live. Kansans, Pedro, indeed, are not indifferent. This is my belief. We should not, as citizens of this great state, allow our politicians to appeal to our baser nature by telling us there will be more dollars in our pocket if they give us lower taxes in exchange for our votes. And they should not receive campaign contributions in exchange for promises of ever greater tax loopholes and not paying taxes. But this is the direction in which I fear we are headed, and it is wrong. And to cover that with the mantle of Christian piety is an outrage. I will not be another generation guilty of committing the same mistake. And all of us should think about the motto of our state, ad astra per aspera, which, by the way, was adopted by the Kansas legislature in the first building that First Congregational Church had at 7th and Harrison. We need to aim above and beyond ourselves. We need to say, what do we need in this state to help the most vulnerable and everyone else to live the kind of life that we could all be proud of? That's the first question. And the second question should be, what will it take to make it possible? And the third question, well, second question should be, how do we get there? And the third question should be, what means will it take? That's the kind of debate we should be having in this state, and not chopping our way to the kind of salvation that will never arrive by these means. KNI, those three letters are auspicious. Kansans are not indifferent. Let us prove that it is true. Thank you.